Today the topic is how to win in the year 2030. We are going to try to predict the future. That is something that many have tried and failed. Others have succeeded. So let's see how we will do, because this will be recorded and published forever. So if we don't get this right, we will be punished badly for this. But before we start, Tsachi, we know each other well, obviously, but our audience, who perhaps is not so familiar with yourself, do you want to start with just a brief introduction?
Yes, thank you. So I'm Tsachi. I'm in the gaming industry for the last, let's say, 12 years. The first 4 years, I've been working for a playtech company. And in the last 8 years, I joined Aspire Global. And since then, I'm the CEO of the group. And throughout time, we succeeded taking the company also to IPO in Sweden. And we are based mainly in Malta, but not only. Also in Kiev and Israel and some other places also soon to be operated.
Brilliant. It's really nice to have you with us here, Tsachi. So to kick things off, the topic that we are discussing today, how to win in 2030, I think it's an interesting topic because the industry is kind of at crossroads at the moment. It feels very much like there's a lot of stigma, let's say, in the industry at the moment. There's overregulation from certain markets. Obviously, that Martin discussed earlier. Spain is now today going out to say that they are now banning kind of sport advertisements for gaming operators. And as we know, the UK, Sweden, Lithuania, many countries are putting harsher restrictions. So how would you say, first of all, before we get to 2030 and before and how to win, so to say, how do we get through these challenges that feels very pressing right now?
It's a good point, because sometimes it's very difficult to look for 2030 before we understand what we have now or what will happen tomorrow, because usually in this industry, you don't care about 4 years from now. You want to gain profit now, revenues tomorrow. And this is, in most companies, this is where the decision is being made, what will happen tomorrow. And also it's connected to the very good conversation that you had last week with Robin, with gray markets, because this is exactly the challenge that you mentioned. Where to go in this path? If to go to the gray markets and to gain the revenues and the profit tomorrow, or to go into other places that we can discuss now and prepare ourselves for 2030. But in the beginning is just to understand as a company where you want to be in 2030, because now there are a lot of challenges. All the time we will have challenges, really all the time. The question is how to base your decisions, if on the challenges now to solve them, or what will be the challenges in 10 years from now, and to solve it already.
Yeah, and the previous panel had a good point on this when we talked about the kind of regulated market and things. They say that you have to be financially strong as an organization to operate in the white markets and in the regulated markets to be able to have this mindset. Do you agree as well, kind of, that the gray markets are for the kind of the smaller operators who are thinking more short term, and the only way to operate in white markets will be through consolidation, through kind of economic muscle, so to say?
Yes, and it's only the beginning, because in every market that it will be regulated, so in the first 2 or 3 years, we will see a hit on the companies that are operating, because the regulator needs to learn a little bit, the operators, all the suppliers. So it's like a learning curve. But again, the understanding that in 2030, you don't have any other way. The gray markets, doesn't matter how you will look at it, there are going to be less and less and less unregulated markets. It's the natural flow of things. We can fight it as much as we can. We can try and have this gray market today and this gray market tomorrow, and it's okay for the next 2-3 years. But it will not be for a very long time.
So as more and more markets become white, and obviously we are seeing kind of almost like a battle at the moment between the regulators who can be the toughest at the moment, and no one wants to be weaker than the other. So when Sweden implements, strict deposit limits, now the UK are discussing to do the same thing, and it becomes kind of like a snowball effect. So with this in mind, what role do you think that the trade associations have in all of this? And do you think that they will be able to do meaningful lobbying towards the regulators and politicians?
Maybe it will be a meaningful lobbying, in the course of things in each and every regulation. But it's a very temporary thing, because again, it's part of the curve that we will have in every market. So yes, we are a little bit surprised or shocked from what the Swedish regulated market did, and some changes in the UK market. But after, let's say, in 3-4 years from now, it will probably be stable. And every new regulated market will have, again, those 2-3 years of adjustment. But if the state of mind of a company will now be built towards those heavyweight taxed markets, or a lot of restrictions on the operators and on players. So if we have this state of mind, that this is how it will look like in 10 years from now, so there are a lot of things that can be done now in order to get it through. Because we will not be able to fight in the lobby, okay, so we will win 1 checkbox, 2 checkbox, but it's not the real thing.
No, you're saying kind of the bigger question here is that the industry needs to accept that player protection and the regulators will be very, very tough as we go forward, and it's very, very difficult to stop this kind of train that is moving in a certain direction.
Like any other industry, we will be able to lobby it and to try to soften it, or to take it through and to take it together with the regulator. But the direction is clear, the trend is clear, and we will need to adjust. I will give you one example. Today, in the recruitment, for example, today, most of the companies, they are recruiting employees where they have offices. But in 2030, and we see it now with the COVID as a trigger, it's not relevant. Europe or the world will be one continent where you will look for quality people in order to manage your company. So it's a different state of mind. So if you will know to start and build your company now, to be a little bit thinner, a little bit more lean in the operation, you will be able to have better structure in 10 years from now. And this is the direction. I will give you another example. We saw the consolidation between NetEnt and Evolution. Because more and more markets at the end will be regulated. It means a lot of heavyweight taxed and other things that are affecting the P&L. So companies will probably they will need to own some products. So I think that in order to be ready for 2030, companies will want to own more and more of the products instead of buying it from someone else, or in addition to buying it from someone else. They will want to have it on their own in order to cost save and to be able to deal with it. NetEnt is a very profitable, strong company. Evolution, the same. So why to consolidate? They are doing what it should be done in order to win the next, generation, because it cannot be for long.
Yeah. So do you think that the same goes for the operators as well when it comes to owning product? Let's say, would there be room for the operators to start making acquisition in the game production space as well?
Yes, we started seeing small steps towards that. 3-4 years ago, we saw big operators buying, acquiring the engine or the games from the big content providers. So they have their own dedicated games. This was the first step. The second step, we saw it with Leo Vegas. They bought an esport company. We know that Mr. Green also did the same step and also had a great relationship with Green Jade Games. So there are those steps. We see drafting. It's a pure B2C. Why to buy this sport platform and to own it when they can just have it as a supplier? So it's the beginning, and you want to have more and more of it in order to prepare to those challenges. That it's just the beginning of the challenges. We are in the regulated markets for the last 3-4 years, not more than that, maybe 5. And again, I'm not against gray. Don't get me wrong. It's good. It's a very strong cash flow, but it's not something that if you want to win 2030, you cannot base your strategy on gray markets. I think so.
Yeah, that's interesting. So if you are a mid-sized operator, and you perhaps you don't have the same economic muscles as the as the giants, do you see any way to persevere through this period of heavy regulation, or is consolidation the only way?
It's not the only way, because those medium level operators, they will probably be faster in being thinner. They will be faster with adopting new technology that will allow them probably deal with some of those amendments and changes in those markets in the future. They will probably do it faster than big operators. And if they will gain some advantage out of it, so then they can be part of the consolidation from the buying side. So it's not, for granted that all the small, medium will be bought out. But they have their way to gain faster growth through adjusting their business faster. And it's a must. Technologies today, to enter a regulated market today is very heavy. You need to spend few months in order to certify your platform for any regulated market and also to maintain it after. So if companies will go to a much better technology, we'll be able to do so in few years from now very fast.
Interesting. We have 2 comments here as well so far from Katerina, who's saying maybe change the mindset a bit and embrace the regulations to one's advantage. Being a pioneer of change has its benefits. I think that's what you're echoing a little bit as well.
Exactly, because we don't have any other way. We can close our eyes and say, no regulation, let's go to black, to gray, and then we are living in a chase. Where will be our next market? Because we know that there is this watch of, a sand watch of 2-3 years until this market, gray market, will become black. Now, do you want to operate in a black market? Depends who you are and what are the risks. So the amount of gray markets for sure will decrease in 10-15 years time, for sure. And it's exactly this.
Yeah, and I see Carl Davis Barrett, actually one of our lovely speakers at iGaming Next 2019. It's nice to see you here, Carl. He's echoing a similar perspective as well, which is the winners will be the ones who can drive towards where the puck is going versus those chasing it. Okay, regulations will always be a force to adjust to, but it should not be the focus. Operators need to ensure that they are focusing on innovative and disruptive differentiation, basically. Yeah, and so in all of this, my own humble analysis of what is happening at the moment is since about 2 years back, there's been a heavy focus on compliance, affordability checks, and AML and KYC and things like this. And it feels to me that from operator side, they have lost the ability to innovate due to the heavy work that is required to stay compliant these days. What do you think, Tsachi, in terms of compliance tools and things like that? Do you think it is a key as well to the future, to be able to kind of automate a lot of these checks, to be able to be more innovative again? Or how do you see innovation? How can we spark innovation in industry?
This is exactly the point what you are touching right now, because the compliance, all of a sudden, most of the companies needed to recruit 20, 30, 40, 50 employees only to monitor compliance, all the documentation and everything. And this is only because of the requirements for regulation. But if we will understand that this is how it is, so if we will be able to create an automated tools, features, to spend time on that, so 3 years from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, once this will be automated, you can be very efficient in the business, because you understand that every regulated market, this will be the direction. It's a fact. We cannot fight it. It's a fact. So we need to change our state of mind and understand, let's find the right time and focus, not to have only compliance in our day-to-day, but we need to have this attention. If we don't want to be surprised and to chase after our revenues, we need to plan it. We need to put it in our foresee future.
Yes, and another point to this, when it comes to kind of economic muscles and investing for the future, I think is the big dragon that we have around the corner, which is the US market that is on everyone's lips at the moment. It's been for years, and we've seen certain organizations, GIG be one of them, I would say, who has heavily invested in the US market. But it hasn't been paying dividends yet, and one could argue that has affected GIG as an organization negatively. What would be your predictions on the US market, and do you think that investing at this stage is the right way to go? And is this also one of the keys to success in 2030, this market?
For sure, 2030, the US is a crucial market already now. And it's a nice question, because when we went public 3 years ago, and a lot of companies already started their initial steps in the US, so investors asked us, okay, so why aren't you going to the US? And we mentioned that the US is so big and complex, it's a different market than the European market, that we don't want to change our focus from the European market right now, and we will join the second and third wave of the US market, because in the first wave there is huge investment in companies. Some of them will succeed, most of them will not. A lot of investment. Payment back will be just in a few years' time. And of course, because it's the beginning, there will be a lot of disappointments in the US market. So we want to join the US market on the second or third wave, when companies are looking for a new partner to engage in the US market. So this was out of a strategy not to join in the first wave.
Yeah, US being a huge market, of course, and being able to break into the US is incredibly expensive. I mean, to get brand visibility and brand recognition, one Super Bowl ad is $2 million. That's 30 seconds of airtime, as an example. And we, as an industry, do you think we are there yet? I mean, the giants, kind of Flutter and these type of giants, do you think that they would want to be in that first wave and kind of create this brand recognition through the US when the market opens?
I think that most of them started, we see GVC and we see Bet365, but you see Bet365 is a great example. Bet365 are there, and they are not in the top 5 or top 10 operators in the US market. And outside of the US, it's clear to everyone that Bet365 is probably the biggest operator in the world. So you might think that they will be the biggest, but they're not. There is the DraftKings and others that are pretty much familiar to the US market, multi-state recognition with the brands, and the newcomers from Europe, nobody in the US know them, and especially not in all the states. So even if they will succeed in one state, it's another challenge and investment in another state and another state. Once you have DraftKings, they are being familiar with the same brand all over. So it's much more difficult for the big operators also to grab the first 5 positions.
This is a good point, I think, and I think would you agree with that DraftKings are in the pole position at the moment to succeed in the US market? They obviously made a great decision with SB Tech, preparing the proper sportsbook and so forth. Would you say that they are in the front runner right now?
Yes, mainly because they already have, before the regulation, they already have database of around 100 or 150 million players playing their games regardless of the regulation. So once you are moving into the regulation, you are just switching it on and you are there. You are already from day one grabbing 50% of the market. So it's a different ball game to win DraftKings in the US.
Yeah, they have an incredible position at the moment, of course, and they are well aware of that, obviously. So what would you say, Tsachi, in the year 2030, now predicting how the markets will look like? What would you compare? How do you think the European market will look like? Asia, US, which markets will be more and less important, do you say? Obviously, all markets are important, but do you think some will be growing more than others?
So I think that the companies that will want to win 2030 in the right sustainable way will try to make the right adjustment for Europe and the US market, and probably Latin America, because it's being regulated market after market in Latin America. And I think that those companies that today will decide that the regulated markets are not for them will invest today in the Asian market, if it's India, if it's Japan, or the African markets, which today is not in the top of mind of companies. And this will be a temporary path. But I think that it starts today, where you want to be in 2030, and then the one that want gray and black will go to Asia or Africa. The one that want the white and sustainable will go to the US, Latin America, and Europe.
Mm. And okay, we only have 4 minutes left, but I have so many things I want to ask you, Tsachi. But another perspective in this, perhaps, when we see operators going into gray or black markets right now, is a new implementation that the Netherlands are trying to do, which is this cool down period, which basically states that now, as Netherlands are regulating, if you want to apply for a license in the Netherlands, you can only do so if you have not offered any gambling activity in that region for the last 32 months, meaning that some operators will be shut out from being able to apply for a license. Now, this might be challenged in court, so we have to see how that plays out. But do you think that those kind of precautions also is something that you need to think about as a major organization as we go into the future, to be careful to operate in those markets?
Yes, and I think it was very clear to the companies that understand and value this market. So we are now already 18 or 20 months after this announcement of being free for 32 months. So we are already more than halfway for that. And that regulated market is not going to open in January 2021, maybe in April or July next year. So by just opening it, already 24, 30 months passed. So if companies receive those freeze in order to enter. So it will be maybe 2, 3, 4 months to go in. And we know that 2, 3 months, 4 months is not crucial in order to grab market share in a European market. So it's not a deal breaker for operators to go into the Dutch market.
Yeah, true. Okay, before we start rounding off, Tsachi, I have another perspective that I think is interesting to talk to as well. Which now we have been talking. We had a heavy focus on the regulatory market side to accept that one of the keys to success in 2030 is to accept the new landscape regulatory wise and where the industry is moving. But technology wise, what do you think this plays a role in terms of emerging technology? Do you think what do you see on the horizon, so to say? Do you think that plays a part as well in the success of the future in 2030?
For sure. If I will need to summarize 3 things or 4 things that you need to do, one of them, of course, is technology, to go into this AI technology and the infrastructure and to do a lot of things automated. This is one thing. Second, you want to be big. So you want to acquire volume and other operators in order to be able to sustain in 2030. Third, you want to acquire and consolidate products, as we said before, in order to be able also to cost save. And last but not least, we need to be able to be lean, thin, with employees that you can manage around the globe. And this is something that if we will implement, it's not easy, but we will start structure it now. I think it will be a good horizon.
Yes. Thank you so much, Tsachi. I have one last question for you. Where will Tsachi Maimon be in 2030?
I hope I will be a teacher in one of my schools when I was a child. This is where I want to be.
That's a perfect. I like it. Yes, go back to basics.
Yeah.
Tsachi, it's always really interesting to talk to you. I really appreciate that you take your time today and joining us. It's been really interesting to read the comments here as well. I saw we had a few more. I'm sorry, Katarina, we didn't have time to take off your question. Peter Paul Dechoy here is actually here. It's the Dutch Trade Association. How do you say, the head of the Dutch Trade Association. He is commenting on Netherlands. Actually, interesting to see here, Peter Paul, that you must have abstained of targeting Dutch consumer for 32 months prior to our application. Only passively having Dutch consumers is not the problem under the draft policy. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And also one last comment from Bogdan. He's saying that he's echoing what we talked about before about brand awareness in the US. Flutter and DraftKings currently are the front runners in the market, and for the European companies to compete with them will not be easy. Bet365 have burned over $20 million in marketing, or what we like to say, 10 Super Bowl commercials, and they are pretty much unknown. Clients in the US don't know what Unibet is, even if Kindred is present there, or mention Bet365 if you don't have a truck filled with money ready to burn in for a brand awareness campaign. You should strongly consider entering the US market. Brand awareness plays a crucial part, obviously, for the US consumers. So yes, echoing what we spoke about before, particularly DraftKings has a major advantage in that market. That's it for today, everybody. And like I said, Tsachi, really nice to see you again. I hope we can see each other in person, and the same goes for everyone else here who is watching. It would be lovely to see you guys in person soon again. But that concludes the second weekly iGaming Next Power Hour. Next week we are back again, Friday 3 p.m. stronger and better than ever before again. So, guys, thank you so much. Have a lovely Friday afternoon and have a great weekend ahead. From sunny Malta, I wish you a good day.